So hello everyone. I have made a lot of videos in recent times on how to quantitatively invest in finance. But we have to understand something that as humans, we have a lot of emotions and there is a lot of thinking that happens while we actually try to invest. It is not just about number crunching or coming to a strategy, but it is also about how we think and the way we think. It matters a lot while not just while investing, but in all aspects of life. So there's a concept called behavioral bias in finance, in which we actually delve into or study in depth the biases that occur in the minds of the humans while they try to invest. Or let's say, for example, not even invest, but any decision that they make on a financial basis. So there are certain biases that stop them from doing certain logical things, and that is why sometimes we can't introspect and see that the way we are thinking is incorrect. So these biases, if you know, you will be in a position to understand whether the way you are thinking or the approach that you're following is correct or not. So I thought I'll quickly probably make a video on this and discuss in brief so that it helps all of us. So this is just a basic outline what we'll be going to discuss in today's video. So I'll just quickly, I had an introduction with you about why the same is required. So basically, there are two types of biases: cognitive bias and emotional bias. We'll understand what are cognitive biases and what are emotional biases one by one. And then first we'll have a basic comparative study between cognitive and emotional bias, and then we'll understand all the items bucketed under each of the categories. So, what are cognitive biases? Basically, these are biases that are there or that prevail amongst humans because of faulty reasoning. I mean, they have a very illogical reason for something, and that is why they think illogically. Maybe because of memory errors, because they do not recall something properly, or they have issues. Anything related to memory in general, or the way you can recall things or remember things. So basically all those biases fall under cognitive biases. And where there is a lack of understanding, where you're trying to read something but you're not understanding, you're making a an understanding out of your own self, whatever you're understanding, and it is not correct. So this type of bias is also a cognitive bias. So what are emotional biases? Emotional biases are basically that, as the name suggests, it is based on the human emotions. Like I can be angry, or I can be shocked, or I can be happy about something. I come to know about a fact, and I try to link it with where I should invest, or what I have invested right now is correct or not. So all those kind of impulsive things are come under the bucket of emotional biases. So as you can see, impulse, feelings, attitude, and all spontaneous, because emotions are spontaneous. So except for the fact that some people try to hide their emotions. So keeping that aside, anything that is impulsive, spontaneous, or is linked with the emotions of humans is comes under the bucket of emotional biases. I hope these two types of biases categorization, how these are placed, is clear. Now coming to the concept of cognitive bias. What is cognitive bias? What are the different types of cognitive bias? Basically, we'll just touch upon them one by one. So you can see a total of 9 cognitive biases. Coming to the first one, conservatism. What is conservatism bias? Let's say, for example, I'm reading an Economic Times article and I come to know about a new fact. It's a fact, it's not a myth. And let's say, for example, for the automobile sector, the government has announced certain incentives. So what does a rational investor do? They will try to do more analysis, and then based on this information that maybe government has announced, so that means the automobile companies are going to grow in the future. So I should probably think of having a stake in those companies. But what a person with conservatism bias will do, he will read the information, but he will be like, okay, I'll just try to ponder upon this at a later stage because I'm occupied with something else right now. And then probably he will forget about this completely. So this is linked to a memory. So you are not being able to factor out of the information, new information that you're reading, and you're not being able to do your analysis further analysis. So this kind of a bias where you actually read new information, but fail to act upon it, not just positively act, but can also be negative action, but at least you have to understand and recall the information to act upon it. So this kind of a bias is called conservatism bias, where you don't pay any heed to the information that you're reading. Next, coming to the confirmation bias. So let's say, for example, a friend of yours told you that a particular stock is going to rise. You know, the word of mouth, when you meet your friends, you meet your relatives, and a lot of people, they tell you that a particular stock is going to rise. You met your friend and you left, and then again you met one more of your relatives, and then you are just talking about investing in all, and that relatives also says, you know, I have a holding in this particular stock that your friend was mentioning, and that is really going to do well. I think I have a lot of holding. So you get very happy. I just got to know about this from my friend. Now one of my relatives is also confirming the thing. So that is why the bias is called confirmation bias, where the person is actually trying to confirm what you have already heard, and that gives you a sense of confidence that, okay, what I heard previously is correct. So let me, without doing further analysis, since everybody is saying, just follow the word of mouth and try to invest in this stock. So this kind of a bias is called confirmation bias. Next, coming to third cognitive bias, which is the illusion of control. So let's say, for example, you are working in a company. Let's just say ABC Limited company. You are an employee of that company. You are a very hardworking employee, and you think that, and all other employees also that are very hardworking. And this company that you are having stake in, the company that you're working in is really going to do well. You think that based on your efforts and your colleagues' efforts. So you will try to invest a lot in that company because you feel that you are in control of this investment because you are working in that company and you can make this happen. So this illusion that you have, that with you working, you're not thinking about the overall picture, the holistic picture. You are thinking that since you are working, others will also be working, and you are bullish on the performance of this company. So you have an illusion of control over this company. So that is why you will try to over invest in this company. So this kind of a bias is called illusion of control. Next, coming to the fourth cognitive bias is the representativeness bias. So as the word suggests, you believe, if you have this bias, you believe that whatever has happened in the past is going to happen in the present as well. Let's say, for example, you will find a lot of people, saying that this particular stock goes up and down daily on a daily basis. But if you see its historical performance, 4 to 5 year performance, it has always given profits, which can be true. It can be a blue chip company or whatever it is. But based on that belief, investing right now for 4 to 5 years is long. Incorrect, is inaccurate. You should do a proper analysis and all of that. So this kind of a bias where you feel that if a particular stock maybe has a lot of movement in the short term, but in a long term, historically, it has shown good performance. Let's say, for example, in a period of 4 to 5 years. So let me buy this stock. I am not concerned about the short term. I will buy it for a 4 to 5 period because historically it has shown good performance for 4 to 5 years. So now also it will show a good performance to 4 to 5 years. So basically, this bias where you think that the past will repeat the present, past things will again happen in the present, is called a representativeness bias. Next, coming to the fifth kind of cognitive bias, which is called the hindsight bias. What is hindsight bias basically? Let's say, for example, you are standing right now in 2024. Okay. In 2020, you had read about the stock and you had made up your mind that this stock will go up, but you did not take any action. Let's say, for example, because of the conservatism bias, you failed to, capture or, leverage on the new information that you gain. So you followed conservatism bias at that point of time and you did not, buy that stock. But then coming to 2024, you're standing in 2024, you see that the stock is still, as you had predicted 2020, that over the long term, this stock is going to rise. You are just recalling the fact that 2020, I thought that the stock is going to up. If I would have, believed my prediction and tried to invest right now, I would have been a millionaire. So at a later point of time, when you're trying to recall something, and it can be the case that you did not even think at that point of time that you want to buy the stock. But now at this point in 2024, you are standing and you're seeing that, the stock is performing well. So you go back to 2020 saying that when I was in 2020, I knew that, this stock is going to go up. So now what will you do is in 2024, you will buy that stock thinking that time I did not buy. Let me not make the same mistake again. I will buy right now in 3-4 years, it will go up. So this kind of a bias is called hindsight bias, when you actually go into the past and you realize that you did not take some action at that point of time. And so now you should take that thing so that in 2028, you will not be in a position to again come back to 2024 and take action upon that. So this kind of a bias is called hindsight. Next, coming to a concept of framing bias. Framing bias is nothing but manipulation. How people, people in the market try to sell things to, I mean, all of us are aware about psychological pricing and all of that. This is basically on how the information is given to you so that, you act in a way which you would not have acted if the information was presented to you in a different manner. Let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, you are, you're going to a grocery shop and there is a snack, maybe a packet of chips or whatever, a packet of oil or whatever it is. So in that it is written, in one grocery shop, it is written 80% lean. And in the second grocery shop, it is written 20% fat. Now, a person who is going to the first grocery shop, he is reading 80% lean. Oh, that's good. So, it is 20% only fat. So, at that point of time, he's just reading the word lean. Now, a person going to the second grocery shop, it's all about the psychology. That is why it is called behavioral bias. And then a person going to the second shop will feel when he reads 20, he or she will read 20% fat. Oh my God, that's a huge proportion. I don't want to buy something so unhealthy. But it is the same thing. 80% lean would be 20% fat only, but they did not mention the word fat so that the person, is not taken aback at that point of time if that this particular snack has fat in it. So this is how the information, a framing bias, where if the information is presented to you in two different ways, you will act in two different ways. So you need to properly think from the aspect of both sides of the coin so that you can come up to a correct decision, and then only you will not exhibit this bias. Next, coming to the seventh kind of bias, which is called the anchoring bias. Let's say, for example, again, let's take the example of a supermarket where you saw a T-shirt which is priced at 500 rupees. Now, you go to, so that 500 rupees T-shirt was for a different brand. We see different brands in one particular place, right? In a supermarket. And so a particular brand's T-shirt is 500, and a similar quality T-shirt, if you go just, a little ahead of a different brand, would be 450. Now, what you will try to subconsciously do, you will try to compare it with the first T-shirt that you saw and then say that this one is cheaper without trying to analyze or delve deep into it, why this is underpriced, or why this is cheaper. Maybe they are using a material that is not as good as of not of as good a quality as that T-shirt was. So this is what this bias is called, anchoring bias, where you try, when you see the same type of things, and this is applicable for stocks as well. You see a particular stock of energy sector, let's say for example priced at 150, and you see another stock priced at 134 rupees of the energy sector, and you want to invest into the energy sector, so you invest into 134, but you did not look at the PE ratio at all. So that you should have looked at the PE ratio and tried to analyze that if this company is priced at 150, what is the earnings of this company and what is the PE ratio? And if that company has a price of 134 and its earning is this much, so what is the PE ratio? Lower the PE ratio, the more the underpriced the stock is. So that is a psychology, and you should look at the other ratio as well. You should not just based on the price. So this is basically an anchoring bias where you try to strike a comparability issue. Next, coming to the eighth cognitive bias, which is the mental accounting bias. I think there was a Hindi movie called Mujhse Shaadi Karogi, in which there was Salman Khan it was Salman Khan or some other actor, I don't recall. Salman Khan only was there in the movie, but I don't recall if he was maintaining or some other actor was maintaining particular piggy banks, or gullaks as you call it in Hindi, for different kind of things, like for sister's wedding a gullak, for his own marriage a particular piggy bank, and all of that. So mental accounting bias revolves around that concept only, where let's say for example you have a portfolio or you have a savings of 1 lakh rupees for example, and what you do is that you divide it into different buckets, like 10,000 rupees for, let's say, my daily needs, 20,000 rupees for my monthly other miscellaneous expenses or whatever. So you divide your money into different buckets. Now what will happen is that once your one particular bucket is exhausted, let's say for example your daily expenses bucket is exhausted, 10,000 rupees, you have finished, that particular bucket is gone. Now what you will do is but you need more money into the for that particular expense. What you could have done is you could have gone to the other piggy banks and see that if you could have leveraged that money, because you would not have needed some amount of money for those particular buckets where you have been saving, and you can use that particular amount of money for the deficit amount for that particular savings or particular expense that you're trying to make. what you will do is you will keep those gullaks or those piggy banks as it is, because they are for a specific purpose. You will not touch them. But since you require additional funds, you will either go for EMIs or a loan. Let's say, for example, the bucket was for a marriage purpose. The marriage funds are exhausted. You need more funds. You expected that you will require 1 lakh rupees. Your expenses for the marriage are 1,50,000. Estimated expenses are 1,50,000. So this 50,000 you will not take from the other buckets. What you will do is you will take a loan, or you will do your some of your expenses on EMI, or you will try to which will charge high interest. So you could have avoided that interest by taking some amount of money from the buckets that were of less priority, rather than paying that interest. So this whole concept of dividing your money into buckets and segregating it and not looking at it as a combined portfolio value and trying to adjust with it is called mental accounting bias. I hope I was able to explain. I'm not All these biases are very well significant and very well detailed. What I'm trying to do through this video is just trying to give you a glimpse or a basic understanding which will be sufficient for a layman to act upon in the daily investment decisions and all of that. Next comes the ninth cognitive bias, which is the last cognitive bias, the concept of availability. Let's say, for example, you are going to your office in a car and you read about a portfolio manager. I mean, there's an ad. I'm not going to the instances where the advertising for a portfolio manager is restricted and all of that. As a professional, you cannot, doctors or whatever, you cannot advertise. Just let's say, just for understanding purpose, you saw an ad of a mutual fund or a mutual fund broking house or whatever it is, and you just saw the billboard. It was a big billboard, and you went to your office. Now, after some days, you want to invest in a mutual fund. You made up your mind that I want to invest in a mutual fund, or I want to go to a particular portfolio manager for making my particular investments. Instead of doing all the research or finding the right person, the first thing that will come up to your mind, if comes up to your mind, the particular billboard that you saw about the particular mutual fund or the particular portfolio manager, if you go to that person or make that particular mutual fund investment rather than analyzing independently, that kind of a bias is called availability bias, where you make the best out of the things that are available to you rather than digging into it, researching into things. So this is a bias which is generally exhibited by lazy people, which I feel. So this kind of a bias is called availability bias. So I think that was all about the 9 cognitive biases. Now we'll quickly move on to the other category of bias, which is the emotional bias, which, as you can recall, are based on impulse, are spontaneous, and all of that. So coming to the first emotional bias, there's a concept of loss aversion bias. Now, let's say, for example, I am holding a share which I bought at 80,000 rupees. Okay. Now, at this point of time, the value of the share is 2 lakh rupees. And I was expecting that 1,50,000 will be the price of the share as on today. And I will, so now I'm more than happy that the stock price is 2 lakh rupees. So, but I'm getting the news that this stock is not going to do well and it may fall. So now I am perplexed that if I have made so much of profit of 1,20,000 rupees and this stock goes down, my profit percentage will go down and my gain will go down. I don't want to do that. But it can also be the case that the stock can go up. You are just believing on one news or one article that you read or one bogus or a hoax analysis or whatever it is, and then you are just trying to come to a decision that you will sell the stock and 1,20,000 profit you will make, so that you don't have to face any loss in the future. So this kind of a bias where you actually try to book profit and don't try to wait for more gain that you can gain out of it. So this kind of a bias is called loss aversion bias, where you're afraid of loss, and so you will just, whenever you have a good amount of profit, you'll book and you'll exit the stock or the particular investment. This is also applicable for mutual funds and not particular stocks only. Next comes the concept of endowment bias. Now, what exactly is endowment bias? For example, I have a very, emotional gift from one of my relatives or one of my friends, whatever. Let's say, for example, my grandfather gifted me a stock. He had invested in that point of time, and he gave it to me as a gift when I was 18 years old. That was his will, that after my grandson turns 18 years, I will give this stock to him. Now, there is a sentiment attached to this particular stock that your grandfather has gifted you. But obviously, his objective could have been, that you make money out of it and you can use that money for a particular objective, for your education or whatever you want to do the best use out of it. But since it is so emotional to you, it is a valuable asset to you, you will never sell it. You will be like, even if it is, it is a very valuable gift from my grandfather, I want to keep it as a memory of him that, he gave me this gift. But you are not actually trying to make the best use out of it by selling it when you require funds to, make for a particular purpose. So that could have been the whole objective of your grandfather, to give you that particular stock. So, and you're never going to sell it. That is your belief. This kind of a bias is called endowment bias, where you inherit something or you have a valuable possession and you are not willing to sell it, even if it is prudent enough to sell it and gain money out of it and put it into more lucrative investment opportunities. Next comes the concept of self-control. Now, there's a term in finance called hyperbolic discounting. This self-control bias comes from that particular phase of hyperbolic discounting. What this means is that, I'll give you a very practical example that I face in my daily life. Whenever I talk to my friends, colleagues, relatives, they are like, कोई ऐसा टिप बताओ कि मतलब short term में profit हो जाए. Though I am a long term investor, but some people are very impatient and they were like, short term में profit चाहिए. Long term किसने देखा है? Maybe I cannot survive. Life is uncertain. मेरे को अभी पैसा कमाना है. And all of that. So this is the best way I could have explained this particular bias, self-control bias, where you actually are more focused towards the short-term gains, and you will sacrifice the long-term gain by selling the stock or the investment in short term to gain that amount of profit, even if you could have booked more profit in the long term. So this kind of a bias is called self-control bias, where you do not have control over yourself to hold it in the long term and you sell it in the short term. Next comes the concept of status quo bias. This is again for the lazy people. This kind of a bias that is mainly exhibited by the lazy people. What happens in this status quo bias is, I have made I have all the detailed analysis of a particular stock or a mutual fund. This stock, and I'm sure based on my analysis, this stock is going to do good. But I don't want to take any action. I don't want to log into my Demat account. I don't want to, go into the app, make the transaction, make the accounting entry for that, and all these hassles. So I was like, leave it now. I'll make money out of something else. So this whole thing, I mean, you'll be shocked to hear it, but a lot of people are kind of, this bias is exhibited by a lot of people. At some point, even when I was very young, when I was just into investing and I had a lot of things going on, I also exhibited this kind of a bias called status quo bias, where I actually was skeptical about the fact that should I have to log in again, I have to leave all my work and try to invest. And because investing is also, you have to do properly, you have to allocate your funds, so all that activity you need to do, but you have other work also on priority. So this kind of a bias is called status quo bias, where you actually are very lazy to actually act upon the detailed analysis, which is going to give you profits. Next, number 5th emotional bias is overconfidence bias. Overconfidence is never good in life. So again, it is also bias. It's an emotional bias where you're too confident about your abilities and you will overtrade and, just keep on trading that whatever trades I have done, I have always been 100% profitable and I've always made money out of it. So I will keep on trading and I will never diversify my portfolio and I will never hedge my portfolio and I will never look at the other aspects. So this kind of a bias is called overconfidence bias, where you actually, it is kind of, linked to illusion of control, but illusion of control was in a different way, which I explained. Overconfidence is more about over trading and all of that. Illusion of control will be more about holding a concentrated position in a single thing, but overconfidence cannot be just concentrated. It can be into multiple things, but just trading a lot based on your confidence that I can do it. I always excel at whatever I do. So this is called overconfidence bias. Coming to the last, but definitely not the least, the regret aversion bias. So I will only stick to FD. I will only stick to basic investments, PPF and all, because I don't want the regret, a very common thing that we see among old people. I'm not trying to demean old people, but they are usually considered to be wise, and the concept of investing, into shares and all was not so much prevalent in the earlier times. People used to do, but it was not such a popular concept, and so they were more into, investing into safer ventures like FD, PPF. So regret aversion is basically, I don't want to get into stock markets, or I don't want to get into derivatives. I don't want to get into crypto because I might have a regret later that why I got into this and lost so much of money. I can't face paisa ka loss chalega, but I can't live with that burden of regret. So this is called regret aversion, where just to because of your regret element, you are not getting into that and you're going to the safer ventures. So I think this was all about cognitive and emotional biases. I just have one more slide on how you should mitigate these behavioral biases in finance. I mean, I'm sure that whoever is watching this video, or maybe will be watching this video in the future, exhibits at least one of these biases. We may not agree, that is a different thing, but all of us have at least one of these biases. So how do you mitigate these biases? You educate, and there should be an awareness, which I'm trying to create through this video, that this is how you should think and this is how not you should think. So education and awareness is very important, and you take proper education, you read proper knowledgeable articles, you do your proper research, and be very aware of what is happening in and around, and not neglect things. A lot of biases that are discussed in which people were neglecting things if they were exhibiting those biases, so you should avoid that. You should set your investment goals clearly, what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve, how much you are willing to risk to achieve that particular position. Next, use proper automation and technological tools. There are a lot of things emerging in recent times where which you can actually leverage and make good use out of it. But obviously technology has its own limitations. That is why completely, after artificial intelligence has become so prevalent, and it will be in future times, they cannot completely eliminate the involvement of humans into jobs. There has to be a basic brain work, which I never feel that artificial intelligence can replace. So obviously, you have to use proper automation and technology, but obviously with the presence of mind. And of course, professionals are experts at whatever they do. You should never take medicine from a medicine shop vendor because you believe that he's so experienced with so many years. You just go to a shop and say, मेरे को headache है, मैं कौन सा दवाई ले, मेरे को पैर में दर्द है, कौन सा दवाई ले. All that, you should go to a proper doctor, get it consulted. Though we Indians are often, of this view that who will go to a doctor and all that. So this is also kind of bias, and it comes into the status quo bias, where you actually don't want to do things. So what you try to go to a professional, a finance professional who can guide you, maybe not a very big portfolio manager, but at least somebody who has basic knowledge of finance, who, if you do not understand, it is not necessary to go. If you lack an understanding, you will not become a small person if you go to a professional for help. And that is what they are there for. And you can be a professional in your field. So it is not necessary that you will always be a professional in everything. So always seek professional advice if you are in two minds or confused, and I think you'll be good to go. I think that's all for this video, and I hope it was insightful and knowledgeable. Thank you so much.